He is a sports columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer and the author of The Rise, Kobe Bryant, and The Pursuit of Immortality. We welcome Mike Sielski onto Hoopsology. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. And really, we're looking forward to this interview. Just your vast experience just about Kobe Bryant and about the Philadelphia 76ers, which we'll get to later, very relevant now this time of year. But first, since you've put out the book about Kobe Bryant, it's been about a year, and I just want to ask you, what has been the reception? Usually on our show, we talk about authors, and the book hasn't come out yet, or it's been out for like a week or so, but it's been out for almost a year. What has been the reception so far?
It's been terrific. It just came out a couple of months ago in paperback. Which was great. You know, you always want to have that happen if you publish a book. And, universally, the reception has been very positive. People seem to have appreciated the fact that I kind of focused on Kobe's early life. I get a lot of feedback from people saying, I learned a lot from the book that I didn't know about Kobe, which was great. That was part of my aim and my goal in writing the book. Sorry for shaking my laptop there. And so far, so good. I haven't heard anybody come back to me saying, boy, you really screwed this up here or there, which is always a fear if you're an author. And I think I can say publicly that the book has been optioned for a movie and a documentary.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
I'm not going to get into the details of who and what and timing and all of that, but that was great news, and so all positive. Justin, thanks for asking.
Yeah, and I think with Kobe, for me, his death really. This might be too personal, but it really hit me in a very personal way, unexpectedly, because I'm a fan of basketball, but I'm not necessarily a Kobe fan. I've always respected his game, but not necessarily like other Laker fans and Kobe fans in particular. Did you find that in terms of when he passed away, just his death, just on just the culture of basketball overall? I know it has hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. Did you find out among other basketball fans that not necessarily were Kobe fans or even criticized Kobe, were his harshest critics, but yet when he passed, maybe appreciated him more since he's been gone for this amount of time so far?
Yeah, I absolutely have, Justin. He had, for all his flaws and for all the complexity, the good and the bad to his life, he had this kind of indefatigability to him, this idea that he was the Mamba, that he was going to be around for a while, and whatever he was doing at age 41 when he died wasn't going to be the end for him. Yeah. And so I think the fact that he died as young as he did really hit a lot of people in the same way that it hit you, that this is Kobe Bryant. This is not the kind of person who's supposed to die young. Kobe can't die. Kobe's got too much more to do. Kobe's had this amazing basketball career, and now he's a girl dad, and he's writing, and he's winning Academy Awards for filmmaking, and who knows what he's going to do next. And we also, as a society, I think, looked at him and said, here was somebody, whether we thought about it this way, consciously or unconsciously, who had been down to the depths, down to the bottom, and through his own doing, really, and brought himself back out of that. And that's a story that we like in America. That's a story that our society likes, a narrative of redemption. And so when that story ended before whenever we thought it would be completed, that hit people very, very hard, I think.
In your research, did you discover about Kobe, and he's very similar to Seth Curry, both their fathers playing in the NBA, even with, Jalen Rose with his father playing the NBA as well. In all three of those cases, them outperforming their fathers. What was kind of the aspects in terms of just a performance jump from like their sons transcending their father's games? Did you discover that through your research?
Well, I mean, I really honed in on Kobe, and I can speak for Kobe more than I can speak for Steph and Dell or anybody else. The thing about the relationship between Kobe and his dad, Joe, was that, Joe was a terrific, talented player, but Joe always felt like he didn't get his just due in the NBA, that he was ahead of his time in kind of a bad way. He was 6'9". and he could handle, he could shoot, he could do a lot of different things, and yet coaches kept putting him in the post in the 1970s and 80s. That's where you put a guy who's 6'9". And Joe had his flaws as a player. He was a bit of a flake. He was the kind of guy who would show up late to the team bus for practice and things like that. And he had to go to Italy and play professionally abroad to really get the recognition that he felt like he deserved. And so, to a large degree, Kobe early in his career felt like, I'm going to have the career that my dad didn't have. I'm going to redeem the Bryant name in basketball. And so that was a great motivating factor for him. And then the other aspect, too, I think anytime an athlete has, as a father or a mother, an elite athlete and is raised by an elite athlete, there's a process of osmosis. You're learning little things throughout the course of your life just because you're exposed every day to the expertise of this parent who has this amazing set of skills. And so Kobe knew how to prepare his body to handle the rigors of basketball. He's 12, 13, 14 years old, icing his knees after he plays pickup in a local Philadelphia gym. And the other kids are looking at him going, what is this dude doing? But he had seen that from his father and his father's teammates in the NBA and in Italy, and he was going to do it too. And, it's those sorts of things that really, I think, made somebody like Kobe kind of stand out from his peers. He was living it and learning from it all the time.
And I think that's probably, you'll agree, where he adopted that Mamba mentality. And I'm just wondering, I mean, compared to, I think, another influence of his, Michael Jordan, I find that a lot of athletes today reference Kobe more than Michael in terms of just having that mentality. Why do you think that is? Is that just because Kobe was younger than Michael? Just because maybe the athletes today can relate to Kobe more? Just not necessarily in terms of like who's the best, but just like working hard. Like you hear a bunch of athletes, they relate to Kobe in terms of his work ethic specifically. Why do you think that is?
I think you put your finger on it. I think it's two things. Number one, I think it's, as you said, Kobe is closer in age-wise to theirs. There are many athletes, many players in the NBA who played with and against Kobe still. So he's fresher in their mind. And then the other thing, too, is, let's be honest here, it's a matter of branding. Kobe gave himself the nickname the Black Mamba. He co-wrote a book called The Mamba Mentality. That is a very powerful term and phrase. You hear it all the time. And so, if Michael Jordan had be like Mike, Kobe had the Mamba mentality. The Mamba mentality is a term that's edgy. It kind of, just in the way it sounds with the consonants in it, it sounds like you need to work hard to have the Mamba mentality, kind of a thing. So I think the combination of those two factors makes Kobe kind of a touchstone for a lot of more recent generations of NBA players.
With Kobe, you mentioned just his international experience and how that's really influenced him. Do you think other players today could take a page out of his book? We've seen really the complexion of high school athletes, and now with NIL and just the changing of college and just with maybe the rules changes. Players not necessarily just going the traditional path. Do you think internationally that might be the best option for a lot of players in high school? That might be the United States, just to play internationally instead of this going to more this college route to gain more of that professional experience, so they're prepared for possibly their NBA careers. Do you think that's more of a viable option as compared to before? That was more of, I would say, a negative for a player to go play overseas. That got more of a negative connotation. But I think now that might be kind of a viable path for a lot of players out there instead of just going the traditional, going to Duke or North Carolina.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Justin. I think it might be. I think it depends on what level you're going to be playing at if you're abroad. I think for Kobe, what it did was broaden his perspective. Kobe didn't have a core group of really, really close friends. You often see that in guys who come into the league. They have their crew, so to speak, or their group, their real cluster of guys who ride with them or die. LeBron has a group like that. Other guys have had, really tight groups like that. Kobe didn't have that. But what he did have was an openness of perspective when it came to interacting with other people, because he and his family were among the very few black faces and families they saw when they were in Italy. So Kobe didn't see race or didn't see differences in culture in the way that a lot of us do. when we grow up in kind of this cloistered environment that so many of us do. You have friends from your neighborhood or you have friends from school, and that's it. Kobe would have friends from Italy, and he'd have friends from suburban Philly, and he'd have friends as he got older from Lower Merion High School, and he'd have friends from inner city Philly who he played AAU and summer league against. So he really he could handle socially just about any kind of situation when it came related to basketball in his career. So maybe there's something to be said for that. Maybe more players ought to be, if they can, exposing themselves to that kind of experience. It's a really good question.
One of the things I've noticed about Kobe was, I think, a change in his mentality towards the media. And I found it, refreshing towards the latter part of his career, him just being brutally honest, him not really caring what other people thought, just telling like it is compared to, I think, the beginning of career, him trying to fit in this box that I think a lot of fans thought he should fit in. Where do you think that change took place? I just thought that was pretty pronounced. I think I've seen that with LeBron now somewhat, and not really caring what the consequences are to speaking, their truth, regardless of what people think.
I think it's a natural process and rite of passage of maturity. You grow up, you get older, you get more experienced, you get wiser. I think marriage and family has something to do with that. Children ground you. Whether you like it or not, they ground you. And so you come to a different understanding of what's really important in your life compared to when you were 22, or something along those lines. So I think some of that is just naturally what happens as you age and gain more experience in life. You feel more self-assured about who you are. And you're not trying to be something you're not. You're not trying to earn anybody's respect anymore. You've already earned it. And if you haven't earned it from a certain someone, who cares? It doesn't bother you as much anymore.
Do you think with Kobe's legacy, I'm just thinking now, another 10 years, 20 years, do you think your opinion of him in terms of how the public perceives him, do you think that will change? Or do you think this legacy that, he rightfully earned will still maintain the test of time? Do you think, will he go through what, Michael Jordan is going through in terms of, people just seeing the highlights on television? Or do you think his legacy might, lie differently? Like I think of Allen Iverson, like he really hits different with a lot of, younger players now, even though they might have never seen him play compared to Michael. So do you think his legacy with just, future athletes that enter, whether they play professionally or just, they play for fun, do you think his legacy will be different than other legends? Or do you think he'll fall into that pattern of just like, he's kind of this old timer lost in time? Like, where do you think his legacy will lie in the future?
I'm not sure he's going to be lost in time because I think his story is so unique.
Yeah.
I think, as we said earlier, the Mamba mentality is something that lasts, that has staying power. And I think the fact that he devoted himself so fully and completely at such an early age to being great, to being the best basketball player on the planet, is something that will resonate for years to come. It's an interesting question, too, with respect to the style of play in basketball. You don't see many players anymore playing the way Kobe played. Kobe's degree of difficulty on the shots that he took was very, very high. Took a lot of long twos, took a lot of turnarounds, took a lot of shots that coaches nowadays would say to most players, don't take that shot. That's not a good shot. I kind of miss that aspect of the sport. I think it's more entertaining when you see athletes like a Kobe or an AI take shots with a high degree of difficulty and you see them make them. But I think that's going to have an influence too. Are we going to continue to see this evolution of basketball into efficiency and corner threes and nothing but 3-pointers and dunks? Or are we going to get back some of the artistry into the sport? Because I think it's missing it a little bit.
Do you think that's because of analytics? Does that have something to
Yes.
do with it?
Yeah, I think that absolutely has something to do with it. I think, you mentioned Steph Curry too. I think he's influenced a generation of young players who, back when I was a kid, you grew up wanting to dunk the ball.
Yes.
That was your thing, was, can I dunk? Can we get a rim so that I can even as a 5 foot a white kid in the burbs, can I dunk? Now it's, can I make a 25 footer off the dribble? Because that's what Steph does. And so I wonder how that's going to change over time too.
Do you think, I mean, I heard, when I was younger that like dunking, there was too much dunking, like that kind of ruined the artistry of the game. And now we're hearing the same thing about the 3-point shot. Is there a similarity there, or do you think the 3-point shot actually has caused more damage compared to, back in the 90s or maybe the late 80s when dunking was probably more dominant?
Well, I think what caused the damage in the late 90s was the way the game came to be played. Very physical, the Knicks
Yeah.
of the 90s, you know, the Spurs and the Pistons of the early 2000s,
Yeah.
kind of playing that half court game with Duncan and, the team that the Pistons had that was so good defensively. But I do think that maybe it's kind of gone too far the other way. There has to be some resistance defensively. It has to look like it's at least a little difficult to score. And I wonder if that's changed the sport for the worse nowadays. You're right about you would hear players dunk all the time, but there can be an artistry to dunk. I think the problem is it's harder to see something new and fresh nowadays with respect to the things that players can do in the air. You have Ja Morant, and beyond that, it's kind of like, okay, well, who else do we have who, when he takes off to make an acrobatic layup or a dunk, you want to see it, and you're going to see something fresh and original. Steph can still do that. A guy can still make 10 out of 10 threes on a given night, and you marvel at his shooting. So, I don't know.
I think that's an excellent point, and also shows social media too. I mean, you have people dedicated to dunking on social media, so it's just like
look at Mac McClung, right?
Yeah, and so when you see Mac McClung on social media, it's just you go to the NBA game, you're not impressed by John Morant or whoever. It's certainly taking that mystique away.
I'm still impressed by Ja.
Me too.
I think what he does is amazing.
Me too. Yeah, totally agree. Just want to shift gears and talk to you about the Philadelphia 76ers. I think they're one of the most fascinating teams in the league, and I just want to get kind of your overall thoughts of the expectations in the playoffs. Embiid's had an MVP-like season. I think he's a front runner to win it. What are you hearing from Sixers fans? What are the expectations? Are they expecting the Sixers to win the title? If they don't win, it's a bust, it's a failure, or are they seeing, hey, if they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, the finals, if they don't win, that's still a success? Or is it just like with Philadelphia fans have a reputation for expecting the best? So, what is kind of their expectations heading into the playoffs?
I think their expectations are high and low at the very same time, if that makes sense. I think there's a good portion of the fan base that expects the Sixers to get bounced in the second round, presumably by the Celtics, because that's what the Sixers have done year after year after year. I do think there's a segment of the fan base that says to themselves, this team is better than it's been. As you said, Embiid's probably going to be the MVP. James Harden's been better this year than he's been in a long time. Tyrese Maxey is a rising star. They have enough to get past the Celtics, and if they get to the Eastern Conference Finals and lose, at least they got that far. But I think most people are looking at this team and saying, if they get past the second round, it'll be almost a pleasant surprise, because they've been so disappointing time after time in the postseason that Philadelphia fans are kind of girded for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I want to ask you about Ben Simmons, and you recently wrote a column about him. And for my co-host, who's usually here, that he's been a topic of debate. And I think an enigma, I think Ben Simmons has been for myself, in wondering why, when he's come into the league, he's had these unrealistic expectations. And I just want to get your opinion in terms of his time in Philly and how things have played out in Brooklyn. Why do you think he had this reputation of, like, with Stephen A. Smith calling him the next, LeBron James, or other people think he's going to be this transcendent player? When I'm a basketball fan, but I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. But I could tell, like, these expectations were way off, and I just wondered why. What we've seen so far is, I think it's been sad what we've seen from Ben Simmons, unfortunately, how his career's played out. But just the way it's happened, why do you think he's had so many of these unrealistic expectations placed upon him, and just seeing his career play out in this fashion now?
Because everybody could see what kind of player he would be if he would just take a jump shot.
Yeah.
He had speed, he had size, he could handle the ball, he had great court vision, he was unselfish, he was a terrific defensive player. He could play virtually any position on the floor. All he had to do was put in the time and the effort to learn how to shoot and be willing to shoot. And he didn't do it. for whatever reason, whether it was because he had the yips or a lack of confidence or mental health issues or just didn't feel like he needed to. He didn't do it. And so, I mean, when the Sixers took him with the number one pick in the draft, there was an expectation that he's going to be the next LeBron because he could do everything else in the way LeBron could. But LeBron got better as a shooter over time, and Ben got worse, if anything. And so people looking, I don't know that there's another athlete in Philadelphia right now or maybe ever who's been as big a disappointment and is as disliked as Ben Simmons is, because you could see how great he could have been if he would have just put in the time and the effort. And it doesn't seem like he did. And I don't know that he's ever going to be anything close, again, to a starter or an all-star or anything like that. He just seems like a shell of himself.
Do fans just have an axe against him? Like, is it different than other, players or athletes in just Philadelphia sports history, their relationship compared with Ben Simmons? Like when you see just another person walking down the street in Philly, when you mention Ben Simmons, is it a lot of angst? Is it like personal?
Yeah, it is. And the counterbalance, the counterexample I'll give to you is Markelle Fultz, okay, who went through something very similar to Simmons in that he kind of forgot how to shoot, okay? But Fultz made a good faith effort. Everyone could see it, that he was trying to get past this. And it just didn't happen while he was with the Sixers. And he's doing okay for himself now in Orlando.
Yeah.
Ben didn't make the effort. Ben didn't try. And that's the worst thing that you can do in Philadelphia. If you try, people here will love you forever.
Yeah.
But if you don't, forget it.
Yeah, they'll and that makes sense. And it's truly unfortunate because I think just with his talent and just certain parts of his career, certain times, I think there was a possibility for him to be a real difference maker in the league and just didn't materialize. It's just truly sad to see.
Yeah. Philadelphia fans don't want to see someone who isn't willing to give his all and embrace the moment. And that's why that pass on that dunk in Game 7 against the Hawks was such a turning point for Simmons. It was, this is the game that means everything. Your season's on the line. You are the second best player on the team, presumably. You are wide open under the basket, and you're afraid to dunk because you're afraid to get fouled and afraid to go to the free throw line and afraid to be embarrassed because you don't want to shoot free throws. And that ended it here for him in Philadelphia.
One last question. How do you see the rest of the NBA, just the Eastern and Western Conference, in terms of the playoffs? Or any kind of surprises that you're looking out for? We have the rise of the Sacramento Kings in the West. There's anything that people aren't talking about that you're noticing that could surprise fans when playoff time is almost here?
Yeah, I don't know about surprises, Justin. I mean, I think the West is wide open.
Yeah.
I'm not sold yet on Phoenix and Kevin Durant as, this 4 seed with a bullet who can just tear through everybody because now they've got Durant. I think Milwaukee's probably going to come out of the East. I still like them best. But the West is really intriguing to me. I think, certainly Phoenix could come out of there. I wonder about Memphis. Denver, has been disappointing in the postseason year after year. Maybe they make a run this time. There's a lot of parity out there. And so I'm curious to see what takes place.
Mike, this has been a fantastic chat. Please let our audience know where they can find you on social media. Again, where they can go pick up the book, and any other projects that you wish to let us know about.
Sure. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Mike Sielski, MikeSielski. The name of the book, it's already out, about Kobe, is called The Rise. You can get it on Amazon or your local booksellers, anywhere you get books. And I'm still writing columns for the Inquirer, and I'm working on my next book, which is going to be kind of a history of the slam dunk, kind of an episodic look at the dunk and its impact on basketball and American culture. So I'm having a lot of fun doing the research and the writing for that, and that'll be out sometime next year.
Fascinating. I can't wait to read that. We've had a couple of dunkers on our show. I'm a fanatic about slam dunks. So when that book comes out.
It's for you then, Justin.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it. Mike, thank you very much for taking the time. Much appreciated.
You got it. Thanks.